Hundreds expected to protest against proposed legislation allowing limited access to abortion.
Michael Reid on LMFM is heard live from 9 a.m. weekdays, and this is a repeat broadcast of the programme. But you can make comment right now on our 24-hour comment line. Call us now or anytime on 1850 365 958. That's 1850 365 958. And the lines are open now. Michael Reid on LMFM.
Now, legislation allowing limited access to abortion will be debated during private members' time when the Dáil resumes next week. And we're told by two groups, Youth Defence and the Life Institute, that hundreds of women and children will protest outside of Leinster House today against these proposals, which they say are not made in their name. Now, the proposed bill has been moved by three independent TDs, Claire Daly, Mick Wallace and Joan Collins, who's People Before Profit and United Left Alliance TD. And on the line with us, together with Niamh Uí Bhriain, a spokesperson for the Life Institute group. And thank you both here for joining us today. Joan Collins, perhaps you'd remind our listeners what you're proposing in this bill.
Michael.
Good morning to you.
As you said, it's introducing a very limited access to abortion. It's called the Medical Treatment Termination of Pregnancy in Case of Risk to Life of Pregnant Woman Bill 2012, and it's implementing the Supreme Court judgment of 1992, where there's a substantial risk of life to a mother, including suicide, that she should have access to abortion in Ireland. We've been 20 years waiting for this legislation to be brought through. We've had 6 successive governments, referendums. The European Court of Human Rights have instructed governments to bring this legislation in, and they haven't. They're footing the issue again now. They set up another review group to look at this. And what we're saying is that 20 years on, it's 20 years too late for the many women who face this in their lives, and should be enacted on. The legislation should be brought in.
Indeed, it's expected that the government will make some move in respect of this following the report from that review group.
Yeah. But what, the European Court of Human Rights and the A, B and C cases last year, we're getting very tired of the fact that governments have not enacted on this in 20 years, and they instructed the government to implement it within 6 months. But instead, the government set up a review group. What we're saying is now, it's just, this is just kicking the can down the road. They're not addressing the issue for the women who are faced with this dilemma and this terrible situation in their lives, where they're faced with a pregnancy that they cannot go ahead with because it's potentially a risk to their life. And we're saying that we have to enact it now, and that legislation we're putting into the private members' time on next week, and we're hoping that the government actually supports it, because it's a very good, solid piece of legislation. All
right, Niamh Uí Bhriain, as we've been hearing there, the objective is to protect life. Why are you opposed to this?
Well, the objective, I have to say, Michael, is not to protect life. And I think it's extraordinary to hear Joan Collins and Claire Daly scaremongering in this way. And we're coming to the Dáil today. Hundreds of Irish women are going to be there with their children. And we're making the point that this legislation is not made in our name. And that furthermore, it doesn't have the support of the majority of women in this country. And there's a very good reason for that. And the reason is that abortion is never a life-saving procedure. And, I think it's time we had an honest debate about abortion. And instead of pretending that abortion is something that's going to save women's lives, let's acknowledge the reality. And the reality is that all of the Irish medical experts have clearly stated that we don't need abortion in order to treat women, whatever conditions arise in pregnancy. So my first message to Claire and to Joan, but more importantly to the government and to the TDs and politicians in the Dáil who need to speak up against this bill on Monday, is that let's acknowledge that Irish women are safer without abortion.
Right, and you say that this is the view of the majority of women in this country. What brings you to that conclusion, and on what basis do you say that all medical experts say that abortion is unnecessary regardless?
Well, Michael, let me deal with your second question first. The government has, as Joan pointed out, has set up committees to look at this issue before. And perhaps the most serious of those was the All-Party Rockers Committee on the Constitution, who held hearings on this issue for almost a year. And they advised that the top medical experts in this country, whether Joan likes it or not, are the obstetricians and gynecologists who deal with pregnant women and who deal with all the issues that arise during pregnancy, including serious conditions such as cancer or preeclampsia. Yeah. And they told the committee very clearly and unequivocally that they didn't need abortion to preserve women's lives.
And do you know of children who have been in the care of the HSE who have been psychiatrically assessed by medical experts, psychiatrists, who've come to the opinion that the child's life is at risk if she goes ahead with the pregnancy? Have you heard of anything like that before?
Well, I have heard, Michael, of the C case, and I think we have all heard of the C case. I think it's very interesting that people like Joan and Claire, who were cheering on abortion for the C case 15 years ago, now quietly never refer to that young lady anymore.
Okay.
And here's why, because this is very, very important, and it's always been brushed under the carpet. Because they claimed that young woman wanted an abortion because she was suicidal. And they'd brought her over to England without her parents' consent and had her baby aborted. And 10 years later, she went on the Pat Kenny show and publicly said that was not the case. She never said she was suicidal, and she didn't even know she was going to have an abortion.
Right. Well,
why isn't Joe Collins speaking up for her?
You could use individual examples all the time, but you made a sweeping statement a moment ago, and it's completely untrue to say that all medical experts have come to the conclusion that abortion
is not completely untrue.
Of course, it's completely untrue. There's feelings on both sides of this, based on.
No, there's not, because the chairman of the Institute of Obstetricians and Gynecologists went to the committee.
Yeah, that doesn't.
So did the masters of the maternity hospitals.
Right.
You cannot compare.
That doesn't represent all of the medical experts in the country.
Actually,
it is equally untrue to say that the majority of women in this country are opposed to this. On what basis do you say the majority of women are opposed to it?
Let me go back to your point, because this is part of the scaremongering. If the chairman of the institute, it does actually represent all of the medical experts. That's exactly who he represents. And we can see very clearly that the medical practitioners who support the legalisation of abortion in this country tend to be GPs.
Right.
Okay, GPs are not medical experts when it comes to pregnancy. Let's look at the experts. Actually, because this issue was being discussed on the Vincent Browne programme recently, and one expert who was listening was an oncologist called Dr. John Crown. I'm sure you've heard of him. I'm sure lots of your listeners have heard of him. He's one of Ireland's leading oncologists, very widely published, very highly regarded. And he tweeted in response to the debate that was happening on Vincent Browne, that in his experience, his very vast experience, may I add, that abortion was never necessary to save a woman's life. So there is no dispute here amongst the medical experts.
Well, okay. We'll leave you to your opinion. On what basis do you say the majority of women share your opinions?
Well, we've seen successive opinion polls by Millwood Brown on this issue, and they've shown that the majority of Irish people are opposed to abortion. 61% in the last poll said that they wanted to maintain constitutional protection for the unborn child, and that it was evenly split between men and women. Like, if you look at what's happening, Michael, there aren't big protests on the streets calling for abortion. This country is in the grip of a huge economic crisis at the moment. But last year, 8,000 Irish people came out and marched to protect the right to life of the unborn child, with no media promotion, with nobody standing up in the Dáil and saying that people should get out on this issue. That's more than the number of people who came out on household taxes last year.
Okay, Joan Collins. Let me go back to Deputy Collins. Why are you going against the wishes of the majority of Irish women, indeed, all of the medical expertise there is in this country?
I'd refute that. I respect that anybody has a right to protest, and the Niamh has a right to protest of the Dáil, etc. It's a free country, but the facts are that 20 years on, the Supreme Court judges 4-1 deemed under Article 43.3 that a woman under substantial risk to her life, and that includes suicide, is entitled to access to an abortion here in this country. 20 years on, we still haven't seen that happening. Niamh was saying about opinion polls. Opinion polls have changed over the years. Recent opinion polls have indicated that people are more open to access to abortion in certain circumstances. So I think Niamh is just getting a bit carried away with herself from that point of view.
Well, I wouldn't agree there. I mean, can we actually, again, as I said, can we look at the
European Court of Human Rights recently, under the A, B and C cases where women wanted to have an abortion in Ireland, couldn't access it, and their life was threatened. Now, I'm not a medical expert in any shape or form. I don't think Niamh is neither.
No, but I'm quoting medical experts, Joan. I'm quoting them, and you're not.
I believe
notice that you're not quoting any medical experts at all. You're just giving your opinion.
Well,
and who decides the law on abortion in this country? The European Court or the Irish people?
The campaign is supported by medical profession people, supported by the IPA, the Irish Family Planning
Niamh, we'll come back to you in a moment, Niamh. Let's hear Joan Collins, and then we come back to you, because we can't hear both of you at the same time. Joan Collins.
This legislation has been supported by the Irish Family Planning Association, been supported by medical profession people. It's been supported by trade unions, by TDs, by people who have an ear to the ground. And what we're saying is that this is it's the usual thing in this country. You sweep issues under the carpet, you let somebody else deal with the issue. What we're saying is that the Supreme Court ruling specifically instructed the governments to bring in legislation on this issue, and we are bringing that in on Wednesday.
All right, Niamh, if I could just ask you, if you're right in your assertion that all of the medical expertise in this country feels that abortion is never necessary, why are you worried? Because this legislation would only allow for abortion where there's a risk to the woman's life, where it is necessary.
No, this legislation, it might be dressed up by Joan as something that's limited. It's nothing of the kind. It allows for abortion where a woman claims that she feels suicidal. That's the same grounds as the Abortion Act in 1967 in England. It's led to the death of 180,000 babies every single year. Let's not pretend. And can I just, because Joan never answered my question, okay? There are no senior obstetricians or any obstetricians or gynecologists supporting this legislation or any push for abortion. The Irish Family Planning Association is not a medical organisation. It's part of the abortion industry that makes millions every year worldwide from killing babies. They're an interested party. They're not medical experts.
My God, what a sweeping statement to make.
It is a sweeping statement. They're part of the abortion industry. They make millions every year from providing abortions. They don't do it for free, Joan.
On what basis do you say that, Niamh? Because of the morning after pill, or why?
No, the Irish Family Planning Association is the Irish branch of Planned Parenthood. It's a huge global organisation. It's amazing actually to see socialists support a global business like this. I mean, I thought they were all about local industry and stuff.
Not sure what the point is there.
Well, my point, I know.
It's a family planning group. Anyway, Joan Collins, you wanted to respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, the Irish Family Planning Association is a well-established association in this country to provide information and support to women in crisis pregnancies, and also to as regards women's health. And it's a very reputable organisation, and I don't agree with Niamh and her statement in that way. But I think
the court was brought before the European Court of Human Rights.
The point about this legislation, that a doctor would have to, and it's a very robust piece of legislation, would have to clear a woman if they felt that the pregnancy was a risk.
So she would have to be psychiatrically assessed, would she?
Yes, she'd have to be assessed and everything, and that's all in the bill. It's all covered very, very clearly. So this, if Niamh feels that that's never going to be the case, well then it never will be the case. But the legislation will be there to allow women who are in that situation, who a doctor deems needs that medical treatment, that she will access it.
But sure, Joan, that's the conditions that are laid down in the British Abortion Act, and there's currently an enormous investigation underway in England because the Department of Health found that those regulations were being openly violated. Doctors were signing. Hold on, let me.
You have to go to a doctor and get cleared by a doctor. So you're saying the medical profession is abusing.
In every British newspaper last week. I'm surprised you don't know about it. It was in every British newspaper last week. I'm surprised you don't know about it. The regulations have been openly broken in 20% of the abortion clinics in England. That's a huge number. Doctors were pre-signing forms. They weren't counselling women. This is an industry that doesn't care about women.
Right, but these women who are in these abortion clinics in the UK, many of them have Irish addresses, many Irish women travelling elsewhere to continental Europe for abortions as well. If somebody is suicidal, why do they have to travel to do all of that?
Well, why do they feel that they need to choose an abortion in the first place, Michael? That's the bigger question. And my answer would be that there's always a better answer than abortion.
Well, somebody else's answer will be different.
No, but I tell you something, Michael, the women who are going there here today with me outside the door, we're just mothers and sisters and grannies like everybody else. And we believe that women should never feel stampeded and panicked and made fearful and feel that abortion is their only option. We say, let's terminate the crisis and not the child.
But you want to take away the option. But you want to take away the option.
No, I want to give people life-affirming options and recognise that the unborn child has a right to life as well.
Is abortion an option? Is abortion an option?
I think that abortion can't be an option, A, because...
But it is an option.
No, wait a moment. A, because it ends the life of an unborn child, and B, because it's harmful for women as well.
But it is an option.
That.
It is an option because you cannot impose your views on other jurisdictions where it's legal to have abortion, and that's where people go and they have abortion, so it is an option.
Well, A, actually, I'm not trying to impose my views on other jurisdictions. I'm trying to address Irish law. But I actually do feel...
But the question relates to Irish law. What's the point in having an Irish law prohibiting something which women can travel to have elsewhere?
But we have a contradiction in law on a great many issues, not just abortion.
And does that make it right?
Well, let me take one example. We have an issue on law and on the age of consent. In Ireland, it's 16 or 17. In Holland, it's 12.
Yes.
Correct. Who are they to say we're wrong and who are we to say they're wrong if you want to get into it like that?
But what difference does that make to the situation a woman finds herself in when it's an unwanted pregnancy, when it's a crisis pregnancy, when the mother may be feeling suicidal? The option is there. By prohibiting it here, you're not taking away the option.
No, what we're saying is that abortion should not be allowed in Ireland and that women should be given more support and be offered life.
So that when women choose the option of abortion, that they have to travel abroad.
Let me finish what I want to say.
Well, but I will if you answer the question.
I'm trying to, but you keep interrupting me. We're saying that they should be given more life-affirming options. In my mind, and I think this view is supported by the majority of the Irish people, an unborn child has a right to life, and you have to balance that right against other people's desires. You know, and
right.
this is I actually find...
So give them more life-affirming options, but the option remains that they can go elsewhere to have an abortion. So what's the point in prohibiting them from having an abortion here? Because on top of everything that's involved in that, which I don't think any woman would claim to be easy, you're forcing them to travel, which makes it all the harder.
Well, actually, I think that it is the Irish people who have got our laws right, and the UK has legalised something which takes the life of an unborn child. That's not something that we should follow. But in any case, we can see that by offering women better counselling and better support, we can bring the abortion numbers down. Where in the UK, where they offer abortion freely on demand, the abortion numbers are going up all the time. And extraordinary abuses are happening.
Joan Collins.
I think there's two issues here, Michael. Let's address the reality. The X case was 20 years ago. There were hundreds and thousands of people on the streets demanding that child... Yes, there was. Yes, there was. Demanding that child had a right to travel, number one, when the High Court put the imposition on her. And then when under huge pressure, the Supreme Court made a very, very succinct decision that under Article 43.3 that a woman in the threat of her life, including suicide, had a right to have an abortion here in Ireland. Now, I cannot claim to speak for every woman and child in this country. I can say that many women would support that viewpoint, and many men would support that viewpoint. Not all, but many. And I think that it's about time that we face up to our responsibility in this country and enact the legislation that allows that to happen.
Okay, well...
Can I say one last thing, Michael? I agree that
if it's never reached in a decision by a doctor to allow that abortion to take place in Ireland, well, then that's fair enough. But if there is a case, well, then a woman should be allowed to have an abortion here.
All right, final word then, Niamh.
Thanks, Michael. I just wanted to say that I also agree that Joan should face the reality of abortion, and I think it's disturbing to see abortion campaigners who give absolutely no thought whatsoever to the humanity of the unborn child. I think their attitude is seriously at odds with the majority of Irish people.
And by the way, can I just say that I never brought the case over to England personally, so you'd want to retract that statement.
No, I'm talking about the fact that you never acknowledge that the unborn child has any rights at all. It's actually kind of disturbing. Like I think for most women, it's like me and most ordinary women who've had children and watched their children grow up, never to acknowledge at all that unborn children have any rights.
Okay, very brief response, Joan Collins.
Well, we'll be bringing the legislation into the Dáil on Wednesday, and we're hoping that we get support from our TGs and colleagues from Labour and Fine Gael, and we hope that will be the case. Okay,
I think people will be surprised if that is the case, but thank you for joining us here on the programme, both of you. Indeed. Thank you very much. Joan Collins, People Before Profit and United Left Alliance TD, together with Niamh Uí Bhriain, spokesperson for the group The Life Institute.